We are live. Yes, indeed. Another edition of Beef Runs. All things college football. I am Sean Brace, as always, joined by Beef himself, who was hot last week with Oklahoma. Back right from the start at noon. Nice call there. Plenty more that we'll discuss from a winning week that was. Ryan Coyle, a.k.a. Beef. How you doing today, man?
Good man. It was a slow morning getting over that loss, that Phillies loss from last night, but turned the page. Got to watch some Tuesday night football a little bit before we hopped on here. We got football every single night the rest of the season for college until like right after Thanksgiving. So exciting time football ahead. We're really getting into the thick of conference play now. We start to really going to see these contenders get separated. Notre Dame season ended last week. So we're really getting into the thick of it now and got some great games this week that's going to go a long way in deciding the future of the college football playoff.
Yeah, you're right. As the weeks roll on, more and more of the unbeaten's get defeated. We'll get into that in just a second. But you start to see who measure up, right? Like who's real and who's not. And
Hmm.
we got a couple of those games going down this week. As always, Ryan, love to get the people involved. Any takes, please feel free to shoot us at Fox PHL Gambler on socials. At Ryan Coyle 35 is where you can find Ryan, right? Nine Coil 35. That's I had to make sure that I got that right. Make sure. Yeah. Okay. And then I am Sean Brace, of course. Sean_Brace. All right. Let's get to it. First of all, from last week, Ryan, because we did have a bunch of ranked teams play, and there still are a bunch of ranked or undefeated teams. Excuse me. It's late. Sorry. 14 to be exact right now. But taking us back to last week, as far as some of those unbeaten that went down, the big one, Kentucky and Maryland, they got handled. Of course, Georgia represented a big way, showed us they're the number one team out there. Ohio State came back and impressively covered the number. Crazy that happened. Texas and Oklahoma was a great game. Oklahoma beating Texas. And then, the one that caught everybody's attention, well, too, the Miami loss to Georgia Tech, ridiculous. They should still be undefeated. Horrible coaching, to say the least. And USC survived, which they were very close to losing that game to Arizona. Went to overtime. And they got a big game coming up here. Maybe they were looking ahead to that. But
Hmm.
as far as those games that took place last week, the number one game that knocked, or the big game that represented a big way to you, was it Oklahoma beating Texas, or was there another result that caught your attention more?
Yeah, I'd say Oklahoma knocking off Texas, but also Georgia dominating Kentucky the way they did. I just thought the way that Kentucky plays that they would have been able to keep that close. But Georgia seems like they're starting to hit their stride. But definitely, I think the main takeaway last week's got to be what Oklahoma did. My whole thing with that game was I loved Oklahoma because it was a huge revenge spot coming off last year's 49-0 loss. And Texas is still Texas to me. Like I've been on the record saying I think that they were due for a slip up. I didn't know if it would necessarily be the Oklahoma game. I thought it would actually be more of like a more inferior opponent where they just didn't come to play that week. But Oklahoma's legit. Dylan Gabriel can ball. That defense is much, much improved from last year, too. So this is an Oklahoma team that's going to be right up there in the conversation as well now as we're going forward for the playoff. Texas, I still think if they go on, they win the rest of the regular season games. Most likely we'll play Oklahoma again in the Big 12 title game down the line. They'll have a chance to get back, but there's a bunch of teams that are going to have a chance to run the table and be undefeated. So any more slip-ups, it rules you out pretty much. We were talking about a couple weeks ago, maybe a two-loss Pac-12 team finds their way in just because of how good the conference has been this year. But I think it's looking more and more like it'll be a few undefeated squads and then team in there. But certainly a big time loss there by Texas falling to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's interesting because the thing that hits me the most, and we got a long way to go, is what happens if Oklahoma runs the table from here on out. They play each other Big 12 championship game, and of course Texas wins that game. Now what? You know,
Yeah,
and
that's
and,
what.
and Alabama's not dead yet. They got one loss. There's a couple, and all the teams that are undefeated right now. We could have real anarchy on our hands at the end of the season.
Yeah, because you have still in the Big Ten, all those teams, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, they all have to play each other. Um, Georgia, I think, still is going to be in for a tough tough couple of battles. They still have Ole Miss and Tennessee on the schedule. And then the Pac-12 is just wild from here on out. I'm sure we'll get into USC in a little bit, but USC still has to play Notre Dame this week. Then after that, it's Utah, UCLA, Oregon State, Washington, Oregon. Like their schedule the rest of the way is murderer's row. There could be some anarchy, but that's what makes it fun. That's going to be the thing. I think when you get to the 12-team playoff, there's more room for error. Right now, there's no room for slip up at all. Like you feel like you slip up, you're going to need some luck down the stretch, and some of these teams might not get it and get left out and be a damn good team on the outside looking in. But it's going to be fun, and that's what the best thing I think about college football is, the chaos that gets provided. Because the Eagles could go out there and slip up this week to the Jets. They're not going to remember that down the stretch when they wind up winning 13, 14 games, most likely. College football, you have to come every single week or your season could be done before you know it.
Yeah. All right. I switched over to the microphones. I just figured out that I was on my AirPods. So I appreciate the text message, whoever was just texting me. Well, let's keep it moving here and let's talk about the card the card that's coming up this week and some of the big games that we have. Before we do that, one quick one, 30 seconds on the clock. The second best team in the country to Georgia, number one, is who?
My team's been Florida State, but I think you have to go with Michigan right now. They're starting to now with Harbaugh back. They're starting to kind of emerge, but as we were saying, they're going to get the chance to prove themselves over the next 6 weeks when they have Ohio State and Penn State playing.
All right, let's get to the card, of course, coming up this week. You pull it up and some big-time matchups. Of course, USC and Notre Dame, big-time deal. Miami, UNC, of course, going to be a great game. Should be a battle of unbeatens, but unfortunately, Mario Cristobal doesn't know how to coach a victory formation. Just unbelievable. So UNC is undefeated now on one loss, Miami. But I want to open up. Let's head out to out west. Pac-12 matchup, 3:30 p.m. Definitely the cream of the crop here. Both squads 5-0. 7th-ranked Washington Huskies, 8th-ranked Oregon Ducks. Game being played in Washington. They're 3-point favorites with a total coming in at 67 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Really interested to hear your play on this one. Outsider's perspective, a guy that has been dialed in the last week or so on playoff baseball. But of course, I know how good and talented Washington is. The points that they've been able to throw at Penix is just incredible. Oregon, though, was impressive when they played Colorado. So have they taken a step back? And look, it's a 3-point spread, so the odds makers are telling you it's going to be a damn good game. Should we expect this go into the 70s, or can we believe maybe for a second that some championship defense might show up and this game will be a little bit closer to like 50-55?
Yeah, I was a little bit confused to see the total at this one only at 67.5. Like you're saying, maybe the teams in a really good game might play it a little bit closer. You get some more key stops down the stretch, but these yardage wise, these are the two top offenses in the entire country. No ands, ifs, or what's about it. Statistically, they're the top two. I mean, Oregon's averaging 557 yards per game on offense, and Washington's averaging 569. So just based off that alone, I'm taking the over in this one. But I think the biggest difference in this game, and the reason why I'm actually taking Oregon to win this one outright on the road here, I think the biggest difference is the balance that Oregon has on the offensive side of the ball compared to Washington. I talked about this going into the Colorado game for Oregon, but Oregon can beat you through the air and on the ground. I mean, balance-wise, 330 yards a game through the air, 227 yards a game on the ground. When you look at Washington, they're only running the ball for about 123 yards per game. I know their offense is more so designed kind of throwing the ball around the yard. They got two top 50 draft picks most likely in the draft next year at receiver. Michael Penix most likely is going to be a day 1 or day 2 selection in the draft too. They can throw the ball around the yard, but if Oregon is able to kind of come up with some stuff this week, Dan Lanning, he's a defensive guy, and find a way to stifle this Washington passing attack a little bit, I don't think their running game is good enough to hang with Oregon. So I love the balance that Oregon has. I think they're the top team in the Pac-12 right now. This is obviously a huge moment for Washington to have this game at home, the opportunity to play this game in front of their own crowd. But I think I saw a stat earlier that Washington's like 2-7 in their last 9 games, I believe, against Oregon straight up. So I do like Oregon to win this one. I'd definitely take them the plus the 3. But I think we get a shootout in this one, and we get like a 42-38 type game. But I am going to take Oregon on the road to win this game.
College Game Day will be in the building. It is the first time both programs have been ranked in the top 10 when meeting in the rivalry. 123-year history. First time both top 10 teams or teams being in the top 10 as far as the matchup is concerned. Pretty cool to see that. Of course, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. When it comes down to it, you're talking about two of the favorites for the Heisman, and you think that Bo Nix will be the talk, or will Penix steal some of the spotlight, even though he comes up short?
Yeah, Penix is actually the favorite on the books right now. I believe he's at plus 210. Williams is at plus 230, and then Bo Nix is at plus 600 too. So it kind of goes back to the conversation we had a few weeks ago, where if you think Oregon wins this game, Bo Nix, I know I just talked about the balance, but this is a huge spot for him. I think if Oregon finds a way to win this game, he might even go up to that number one spot, kind of depending on what Caleb Williams does as well. So if you can get him right now at 6-1, and if you think they have a chance to win this game, I would definitely throw a little bit of a wager down on Bo Nix Heisman right here.
Big time total in that game, and looking forward to that one. 3:30 p.m. kick. DraftKings Sportsbook, once again, where we're getting our odds from. Let's keep it moving. Next game, and another monster total, but this one definitely has me wondering, what's going on here? Notre Dame and USC. USC, of course, undefeated, 6-0. Barely got by Arizona last week. Got to overtime. Very lucky to come away with that victory. Of course, did not cover the number. Irish 5-2 on the season. As you said, season came to an end last week against Louisville. Number coming in at 63. Irish are 2.5-point favorites. Total coming in at 63. And I'll tell you what, all you need to know about USC, 2-4 ATS. So be careful with the devil that you dance with on this one. But the Irish are 2.5-point favorites at South Bend. 63 is your total. What are you looking at here, Beef?
I think this is another situation where that USC should be in position to win this game. I do think we talked about it a little bit ago, their schedule going forward. I certainly think they're going to slip up at some point, but I don't think it's this week. This Notre Dame team is dead. I mean, I thought they were dead after that Ohio State game. I thought Duke was going to beat them. They almost did. It took a 95-yard drive at the end of the fourth quarter to overcome that game, but they had another golden opportunity to get another ranked win last week against a Louisville squad, and they just did not show up. And I mean, at this point, what are you saying in practice? Like, you have no conference championship to look forward to. You're just maybe hoping for a 10-win season and get to like a New Year's Six bowl game. I just think that they're kind of lacking motivation right now. And USC, as we talked about with the loaded schedule they have coming up, they have everything to play for still. And this would be another good win. I mean, I think Notre Dame will finish with 8 or 9 wins most likely at season's end. But you can't afford a loss in this one with all the daunting games on the Pac-12 schedule coming up. So I think USC comes to play. And if this game does get into a shootout, from what we've seen from Sam Hartman ever since he was playing those kind of cupcake games at the beginning of the season, now that he's been playing, Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, he's really slowed down a little bit. And I was a big Hartman fan coming into the year. I just don't think he's going to be able to go score for score with Caleb Williams. Once they wind up playing, Michael Penix or Bo Nix down the line, those guys can go score for score with him. But I think this is a game that USC should win. The defense is terrible. Going to triple overtime against Arizona is a joke. And that's going to come back to haunt them down the stretch. But I don't think this week USC still has too much to play for, and Notre Dame has no motivation. So give me USC in this one, despite the rivalry game.
Tell you what, USC has been impressive, of course, on the offensive side of the ball, led by Caleb Williams. We understand that Heisman Trophy winner from last year. Really going to be difficult for him to win it 2 times in a row, just because of how the voters would view that, as only one other player has ever done it before. But when you're leading the top dog as far as offense is concerned in the country, they lead the FBS in average points per game, 51.8, ranked 4th in total offense, over 523 yards per game. I mean, why would that stop against Notre Dame's okay defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this, as far as the offense is concerned, this is the best offense they've faced.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I was just talking poorly kind of about Notre Dame's offense, but Arizona goes out there and puts 41 points. I think Notre Dame should be able to move the ball as well too. And
True.
I mean, I think honestly, I said this at the beginning of the season in week 0. If you would have taken USC's over, I think it's hit every game except one so far this season. Like, that is pretty much one of the best value bets in college football right now, just because of how freakish Williams and Lincoln Riley can be on offense together. But also how bad the defense can be. And it's insane because they added all this talent in the transfer portal. That's Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator. That's Lincoln's like go-to guy. That's his right-hand man. But that has to be a major change this offseason, because you could potentially have the back-to-back Heisman winner for the first time since 74, 75, and no college football playoff appearances. That would be a crime for just, the college football playoff in its history. So I like the total on that one as well, headed over.
Yeah, it is crazy to think like that, and it just blows me away that USC can't recruit anybody on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I don't understand that. I know Lincoln Riley, and I know where his mind is at, but it's inexcusable. Like, you're USC. Go get some kids from the defensive end position that can at least just tackle the quarterback, run after the quarterback, get sacks. I don't know. Maybe I'm making it a little easier said than done, but you would think Lincoln Riley with USC, Heisman Trophy, LA, NIL money coming in, that they would be able to get a few good defenders. But
it's been the same thing with him since Oklahoma too. I mean, had Heisman quarterbacks and Kyler and Baker, and
true.
he's never won a college football playoff game. That's why I was lower in him coming on the year. And he's actually had, if you look at his career record as a head coach, he's lost at least 2 games every single year as a head coach. So the guy that his teams don't necessarily show up in the big spots, and it's never really on the offensive fault. It's more so at the line of scrimmage and on the defensive side of the ball.
Could be Dallas Cowboys' next head coach.
Wouldn't surprise me. I saw a picture today of Dion in his Cowboys hat saying McCarthy keeps it up.
It wasn't him just putting it. Was it somebody that made it on the computer?
Oh yeah, it was like an edit. It was like an edit. It wasn't his tweet, but I was like, that wouldn't surprise me at all either.
I love it. Come on down to Jerry's World. Share the stage with Dion. I love it. All right, next game up. Let's talk about Miami and UNC here. ACC. It's unfortunate. Again, I don't think we're talking about national championship perspective here by no means, but it would have been a great story if Miami would have held it down or held it at the end and beat Georgia Tech. I can't believe they lost the way that they did. Unfortunately, they did, and now we got a 4-1, I believe, Miami squad taking on an undefeated UNC squad at 5-0. Number opened at 4, down a tick to 3.5. 57 is your total. Game being played in Chapel Hill. The first thing that comes to my mind when we start breaking this game down is what type of performance are they going to get after losing the way that they did, and Cristobal somewhat lost the locker room. You saw a lot of guys actually criticizing the coach.
Yeah.
I know he's a good coach. I do believe it, but man, it's inexcusable, and it's happened before, and you just can't lose games like that. It's college. They should be able to put it behind them, but you never know. They're human beings at the end of the day. Your thoughts on this one? Where do you stand on this game?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, for those who didn't or might not have seen it, all Miami had to do was knee the ball with 35 seconds left, and the game was over. Said they run it. The guy tries to fight for extra yards. They wind up fumbling. But Georgia Tech gets the ball on their own 26 with 25 seconds left, and Miami's still up 3. So, all right, worst comes to worst, force a field goal. They allow a touchdown in that 20-second span. Like, what is going on? So,
2 plays, right? 2 plays?
Yeah, they had, or there was the first play was an incomplete pass, and then they had 2 big plays after that. I mean, we can bash on the coaching all we want, and that certainly is where it starts. But the defense too, you can't get the stop there either. I mean, that's pretty awful. And that, like you said, Sean, is one of the things that could break the locker room, and a team that I think was headed on the right path. I mean, they had that pretty big win earlier in the year against Texas A&M. Then you were kind of coming there. It might have been a look ahead spot last week, but you had the game won, so that's really not an excuse anymore either. And now this is the type of loss that could push that Miami program back down and remove them from where they're trying to go, get back to that national, picture conversation. But for that reason, I really like UNC to cover this week. I think that was a demoralizing loss. I was kind of surprised to see this one only come in at like 3.5. I thought it would be more so like a 5.5, 6. UNC has been playing much better as of late. Had a few close games like towards the beginning of the season, but this is a team with North Carolina that they've won their last 3 games by an average margin of 22.6 points per game. They're playing some of their best ball with Drake May at quarterback since he became the starter last season. And this is a team that is looking to run the table, I guess, the rest of the way heading into that ACC championship, most likely against Florida State down the line. So this was a big time game for UNC to kind of keep on that path and that trajectory toward that game. But like I said, they've won their last 3 by 22.6 points per game, an average of. This is a team that's just been finding ways to dominate each and every week. And I really like them this week against a Miami team that's broken. And this is one of those games that UNC comes out, gets up early, like 10-0, 14-0. It could be over by halftime. You could see fights on the sideline, coaches going at each other. I think this one has the potential to get ugly and be a really bad look for Miami.
UNC has Duke on the horizon with like 6 or 7 games left, whatever it is. It seems like it's probably about second or third last game of the season. So that could be a tough spot. Of course, rivalry there and a lot on the line. And Duke, depending on what's going to happen with the quarterback spot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he still out? Duke's Leonard, he's still out for Duke?
Yeah, it's an ankle sprain. I don't think that they've officially declared him out this week. They had a bye last week, so who knows
That's
what's
right.
that. But I believe it was like a high ankle sprain, so that's usually like a 3 to 4 week type injury. They got a couple big games coming up as well. They got Florida
NC State this weekend. Anything on that one? 3.5 for Duke. If Leonard doesn't play, is this maybe a look at the Wolfpack for you?
Yeah, that's a weird one because NC State needed to go down to the wire last week against Marshall. I believe that was like a 48-41 game. But that I don't know who off the top of my head Duke's backup quarterback, but seeing that 3.5 makes me kind of think that Riley Leonard would most likely be playing in that one.
Oh.
But obviously there's a lot of unknown with that one. Is Duke at home there too? Yeah,
I
Duke's at
believe
home.
Duke is home.
Yeah, I mean, NC State, though, hasn't looked great this year. They got blown out by Notre Dame. Brennan Armstrong, he's got 5 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He has been a very underwhelming transfer from Virginia. That's a game, too. That's 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Wait till the last second if you're going to do any type of play on that one. If if you're chasing losses or something, see if Riley Leonard's playing because there's too much of an unknown right there for now.
Yeah, if he can't go, a redshirt freshman's going to go who has just attempted 13 career passes. And a little look ahead spot as they have to travel to Florida State next week. I believe you said that. So that could be a game that I'm definitely circling that game. And as you're right, you're spot on where hold up. Let's see if Leonard, if he's not playing, that might be a Wolfpack play for me. All right, let's keep it moving. Other games on the docket that we got to get beef up on here, and I wanted to talk about A&M and Tennessee here. Of course, A&M, what we know what happened last week against Alabama, and is Jimbo Fisher's job in jeopardy in your mind? Like he hasn't delivered at all. That was a big damn deal. Is he coaching for his job? Do you think his job could be, he could be fired this year, depending on how they close up shop the rest of the way?
I doubt fired. It might be a circumstance where he finds a different he looks elsewhere and somebody else wants to bring him in. But the buyout number, I remember that was the big deal last year. The buyout number was like 80 last year. I want to say it's somewhere like 60 to 65
God
million right
bless
now. Like,
Jimbo.
yeah, like he'll be fine regardless of whatever situation. But I don't think they could fire him. But it has been super disappointing because of the recruiting classes they've had. And then they brought in Petrino this year, who was supposed to help try and fix the offense a little bit, and he hasn't really been able to get them in the right situation. But when you look at the same time, the quarterback that they had at the beginning of the year, Weigman, I forget how you pronounce his name. He threw for over 900 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. He was looking pretty legit early on. Now he's out for the season with an injury, and Max Johnson, who's been an SEC retread type of quarterback, floating between LSU and Texas A&M. He's in there now. He's nothing really to write home about. So I guess Jimbo could have that excuse, but they've lost their 2 biggest games this year so far to Alabama and Miami, and they're not really looking encouraging. This is a Tennessee team too, coming off a bye. I think they kind of righted the ship 2 weeks ago against South Carolina after that really disappointing loss to Florida that I think is going to look worse and worse throughout the year. This is a game where I don't really have a great read on it, and it's kind of weird. I think that Tennessee is only a 3.5-point favorite. I thought they would be more so like a touchdown, 6.5 in that type range. So it's a little bit weird for me. I think it's more so a stay away game. There's a lot more other games on the slate that I would feel more comfortable throwing a wager down on. But If I had to make a pick in this one, I would probably take Tennessee -3.5. A&M's in that position where that was kind of a demoralizing loss for them as well. And then Tennessee coming off this extra rest, the offense is looking better than it did earlier in the season. So that would probably be my play in this one.
All right, we'll get to your card in just a second. You'll give us some plays that you're eyeing up. Can't wait to hear those. Let me hit you with some rapid fire. Question number one here. Overall ranked number 1, 2, and 3 squads in the country are all in action. And guess what? They're all kicking off at noon. Georgia at Vanderbilt. They are 31.5-point favorites. Indiana, on the road at Michigan. Michigan's a 33.5-point home favorite. Ohio State on the road at Purdue, given 19.5. That was the same number last week against Maryland at home. Total coming in at 49.5. Not looking for an outright upset, but I'm looking for a dog to cover the number. Recommend one. Vandy, Indiana, or Purdue if you had to.
I mean, on my card, I got Georgia -31.5. Like I said, I think they kind of found that stride a little bit. Who is Michigan
Michigan
playing?
and Indiana? Yeah, 33.5.
Indiana hasn't looked great either. And then who is option 3?
Purdue.
That I would probably take that one. And that one's at Purdue.
Correct.
Ohio State historically hasn't played the best there. I remember probably 3 or 4 years back now, Purdue won that game outright. So if I had to pick one between those three, I think I would most likely lean that. I do have in that game, though, I have the over of 50.5. I think that one's going to be kind of throw the ball around the yard type of game. But I think Purdue out of any of those three would probably have the best chance to cover. I think Georgia is starting to get rolling. Michigan, now that Harbaugh's back, is a team that you don't want to play. And Indiana most likely is going to finish right there at the bottom of the Big Ten with Northwestern. So I do think Purdue is going to put up kind of a fight. And we saw last week with Maryland and Ohio State, that was a 10-10 ball game at one point, and then Ohio State kind of put it on. If Purdue's able to perform like that kind of at home, keep it close, get the crowd into it, because that's the Super Bowl there for them. That's their biggest game that they're going to be shown out to. That's one I'd probably be looking at. And you said it's at 20.5 right now?
Correct. 19.5.
19.5. Yeah. So same number right there as the Maryland game. I'll take Purdue plus the 19.5 in that one if I'm going to have to pick a dog.
I actually like that. I like that play too as well. I think maybe you could catch Ohio State sleepwalking a little bit there at that noon kick, coming off of what they just went through with Maryland and thinking that possibly they could just hit the gas pedal at any time. And as you pointed out, doesn't get any bigger than that for the Boilermakers as Ohio State coming in. All right, over to the SEC, 7 o'clock kick, 7:30 kick. Kentucky hosting Missouri. Kentucky's a 2.5-point favorite. Missouri pretty good, 5-1 on the season, 1-1 in conference, 2-1 Kentucky in the conference, 5-1 as well. Also Auburn and LSU. LSU definitely the better squad here, although they did lose. Nice call by you, Ole Miss. 11-point spread here, 60 is your total in that one. Same question. Is there a dog out of either of those two that you would like to roll with here, Auburn or Missouri?
I actually have Mizzou winning this game on the road. I think that was for both teams last week, Mizzou and Kentucky. They got a little bit, a slice of humble pie for playing a couple of the big boys in LSU and Georgia. Mizzou just down the stretch didn't have the firepower to keep up with that LSU offense. It's been pretty insane, and the defense has been so underwhelming. That's why they've kind of struggled. And Kentucky, on the other hand, just got absolutely manhandled by Georgia. It's one of those things, too, like we're seeing it at the NFL now. It happened a lot last year. The team that played the 49ers the week after would lose just because of how beat up they got. I think you can kind of roll that into what Georgia did to Kentucky last week, and they just big boyed them in every step, every fashion. That was just an absolutely dominant performance, and another kind of demoralizing loss for a team where a Kentucky team that thought, all right, maybe this is a year we can break through. We got the chance to potentially beat Georgia and, maybe win the East this year. They lost all hope with that last week. And this is a Mizzou team, I think, last week was a much better battle with LSU, and they're a more competent offensive squad. I mean, Brady Cook, he's a very good quarterback, 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the year, I believe. He's balling out right now. So I like Mizzou to win that game at Kentucky this week.
All right, let's go ahead and get on over to your card. Fill us in with some winners. What are you eyeing up? Start with your favorite play. Where's your favorite play that we haven't discussed yet?
All right. I'm actually going to go with it's a big number, but I'm going to go with UMass plus 43.
Ooh.
They got Penn State this week.
Woo!
They got Penn State this week at Penn State, and we know Franklin knows the spread. It seems like he's always got that kind of in his back pocket. But this is ultimate look ahead spot. You got Ohio State next week for Penn State. And I think if this game is, 31 nothing or something at the half, we don't really see much of Penn State in the second half. And they kind of take the foot off the gas, don't want to show too much, don't want to risk any of those key guys getting injured. We want to be fully healthy going into that Ohio State game. So I am looking at UMass plus the 43. And I've been on fire on my Friday night games.
That just sounds great. Plus 43. I love it.
My Friday night games. Yeah.
You have been on fire on Friday night.
8-0 my last 8 Friday night plays, and I'm eyeing one this week. The over of 57 in the Tulane Memphis game. I talked about Memphis on my other podcast a couple of weeks ago. They're one of the fastest teams in the country, like tempo wise, in terms of snaps per game. This is a Tulane team too that can really put up some points, and I think we see a bit of a shootout in that one. I think it's like a 38-30 type game. So I really like to get the weekend rolling with a winner there on Friday night. And then I guess if I had to give out one more, we kind of talked about already the over of 67.5 in the Oregon game. I really like that. And I think I'm actually going to take the late night game, go to the Hawaii game, 11 o'clock.
Wow.
We're going under 52.5 in that one. San Diego State, San Diego State's one of the best teams in the country in terms of the under, historically under Brady Hoke. I feel like that's another one where with like USC, if you're going to just bet the over every game for them the entire season, you're going to be profitable. Turn the page to San Diego State in terms of the under. That's another one. So some kind of weird plays this week. Not exactly. I mean, we covered a lot of the big boy games, but UMass plus 43, San Diego State under 52.5, and Tulane over 57. I'm sure that the games that everyone will be tuned into.
Well, you got my attention on Friday night. That's for damn sure. Definitely in on that one over the total on that one. DraftKings showing 56 here. And then, of course, the other ones as well. The Penn State is on the eyes of everybody right now because if this team continues to win, they got that tough matchup coming up against Michigan. And is that their only tough game left on the schedule? Is that Michigan? That's it?
Penn State?
Yeah.
They got Ohio State next week.
Oh, that's right. So Ohio State's next week, and then they'll play Penn State. Or excuse me, Michigan.
Yeah, it's down the line. I forget exactly what week it is. It might be like week 9 or 10. But yeah, those are the two big boys left.
We just went over that on the damn show. I don't know how I forgot that. But anyways, yeah, so we'll see. Like you said, we're all going to find out who's who and what's what over these next couple of weeks. It's exciting to say the least. All right, Ryan Coyle, as always, man, appreciate you setting us up for success. Once again, beef up front, wherever you get your podcast at. And, of course, be sure to follow Ryan Coyle 35 on socials. Beef Up Front, the podcast, is available on Instagram and on Twitter as well, and over at foxphlgambler.com. Ryan, good luck on all your plays, man. Look forward to watching these games a little bit more in detail. Last week, I was cooked. I had nothing, and my mind was on Phillies baseball at 6 o'clock. I was locked into that Baltimore Orioles and Rangers game, which I completely swung a miss on everything in that game. Was pissed off. There was a 4 o'clock game that I was Houston and Minnesota. Like college football, I said it on the air. I was just like, I was so dialed in because of the Phillies and Major League Baseball. Like, I'm just like, you know what, man? Like college was on the backside. But of course, 1 week to the side, get the juices going. Maybe step away for a little bit. It's a good thing, but I'm looking forward to these games, of course, with USC and Notre Dame and Tulane on the over on Friday night.
Yeah, once the Phils win on Thursday, then you got your Friday night winner with Tulane, and then you got Saturday all day to enjoy your college football.
You're damn right. And we ride off into an NLCS week coming up. Ryan Coyle, always a pleasure. Beef up front. We'll talk to you next week. Good luck on everybody's plays.